Halloween season. The season that squeezes in right before everyone focuses on the winter holidays that are months away. And what better way to spend the season of terror than with a game trapped in a spooky mansion?
Resident Evil.
Resident Evil is a game series filled with many sequels, spin-offs, movies, and theatrical performances. Not even joking about that last one. And I own the first 3 games as remakes along with RE4, and I've never even touched one of them until now. Why? Short answer, I just didn't feel like it. Long answer, they've just been in my backlog for a long time now, and ever since the release of Resident Evil 3 Remake earlier this year, I've been wanting to give them a shot more than ever. I'm a big fan of horror, so I think playing the remake of the first game is a good enough place to start as any. Resident Evil first made its appearance on the PS1, and has continued until this day as Resident Evil 8 is coming out later for the new PS5. Resident Evil has seen its share of rough entries for sure, and a long overdrawn plot through its numbered and unnumbered games, which is a great way to get people confused. I've always been a fan from afar looking at the games of Resident Evil, but now I get to actually experience it for myself. I'm not playing the original Resident Evil 1, but the remake has been praised countless times as one of the best Resident Evil games, remakes, and horror games ever. And this remake originally came out for the GameCube in 2002. Those are some big claims. Let's see how it holds up even now on the PS4 thanks to the HD remaster it got along with Resident Evil 0. Let's get the story out of the way first. The story of Resident Evil is a bit strange to talk about, as you can start the game as either Chris Redfield or Jill Valentine and basically go through the exact same story with a few different story beats at points. You'll know what I mean later. So the story begins with the Special Tactics and Rescue Service, also known as STARS, Alpha Team heading to where the previous STARS member, Bravo Team, went missing in the middle of their last mission, to investigate the outskirts of Raccoon City where reportedly, people were apparently eaten by several others. When our Alpha Team arrives, all they can find is a helicopter. Oh, and some freaky looking dogs that chase our cast to the mansion where the story truly unfolds. If you started this game as Jill, then Chris went missing as you were running to the mansion. But if you pick Chris to start with, a character that's prevalent in Jill's story, Barry, goes missing instead. Only 2 boys per character story allowed. The other boy is named Albert Wesker, the captain of Alpha Team. Well, it doesn't matter much at first, since soon the team is split up after Jill or Chris encounters their first zombie. Now if it were me, I would try to leave the mansion and have more of a look around. But the game doesn't give a shit about what you think, and those dogs will make sure you stay in there. Now, the story for the most part is just the experience and the atmosphere of the mansion, and figuring out how it works and what's going on. From discovering that unless you destroy a zombie's head, or blowing off their leg, they'll come back later as a Crimson Head. How the scientists in the facility discover the first bits of the outbreak, the different experiments that live on the property, and why all the experiments happen in the first place. Again, different story beats happen differently depending on the character you choose. As Chris, later in the mansion you'll meet 2 characters from Bravo Team, a terribly wounded Richard Aiken and the girl trying to help him, rookie Rebecca Chambers, where you can help save Richard with some serum. Or not. As Jill, you meet Richard Aiken alone with no Rebecca present. Presumably because she died earlier on, probably by helping Chris with whatever he's doing in Jill's story. But after meeting Rebecca as Chris, the 2 help each other out, which by that I mean she gives you free healies. And after you as Chris encounter what Richard found, a fucking giant snake, Rebecca saves Chris the same way you saved Richard. Or not, with some serum. Jill also ends up the same way as Chris in her playthrough, but since she doesn't have a Rebecca to help her, she just tanks it and walks herself to the room with the serum alone, now equipped with Richard's signature assault shotgun. Yeah, he died. Earlier I mentioned property, and that's because you don't stay in the mansion the whole time. You explore the whole property of the mansion in the Arklay Mountains. You explore the courtyard, the backyard, the residence area, and an old shack in the woods with a weird zombie lady with her mom's face attached to her. When our heroes do reach the residence area, a few things can play out. For one, you can find an aqua ring in the basement filled with sharks, including a giant one. And if you decide to let Richard live as Chris earlier on, then at this point he saves Chris and dies anyways. The eternal inevitability of death is a bitch. But hey, now Chris also gets his nifty shotgun. After dealing with the sharks, you discover this is where the root, of all the vines is attacking you from. A giant plant. Now, and I didn't know this until after I finished the game, but if you let Richard die early on in the mansion, then Rebecca will come in and help Chris fight off the giant plant. But I didn't do that. As Jill, you can do what Rebecca does to help Chris and create a virus that weakens the plant. Chris can't do this though. Probably because, I don't know, big man can't science? But if you do this as Jill, Barry comes in with a flamethrower and finishes the plant off. After, you go back to the mansion so Barry and Wesker can stay and investigate. Now after more of exploring and discovering, during the Chris playthrough, a point will happen where Rebecca is pinned in a corner by one of these creatures called hunters. If the player doesn't immediately go help Rebecca after she screams,
Rebecca!
She will die, and you're stuck with that sadness for the rest of the game. Or, load your save now knowing what room she's in for sure.
I didn't mean to get you worried.
Later you discover underground tunnels to explore, and this is the point where Jill's next story beat happens because when you encounter the lady zombie with her mom's face again, Barry is with you, and he leaves you along with taking away your only means of immediate escape. And when you eventually do escape and find him, Jill asks why the hell he tried to let Bulletproof Lady kill you. But that shit is cut short when the bullet sponge appears before you in the room. Jill can either give him the gun back that she stylishly took from him, or you can keep it, gain a new weapon, and let him bite the dust.
Barry!
Jill at this point, or Chris, finish off the chain lady, Lisa Trevor, once and for all. And by that I mean she found her mother's head and jumped off into the abyss. Soon after this engagement, our heroes discover a secret lab, which makes sense since the files and books say that to test there, they would need a lab to do most of the stuff. The Aqua Ring can't do it all. In the lab, Jill and Chris learn for 100% certainty that the Umbrella Corporation is behind the whole thing. The whole medicine thing they were used to represent was all a front for their true experiment of testing to create powerful super creatures. It's like if CBS was planning nuclear war the whole time. Also, during this part, we see a suspicious looking photo that has someone that looks a lot like Wesker. Also, the player can, not necessarily, but can discover either Jill or Chris in a deep underground cell, but can't open it since no key for it is anywhere. At the final section of the lab, Rebecca meets up with Chris, or Barry for Jill, to make their way to the bottom floor of the lab where they confront Wesker. Wesker explains that he's always been with the Umbrella Corporation even before STARS, and that he purposely led them to the mansion to take care of the incident, but more importantly, to have them killed off entirely to make way for the real purpose of all the experiments, the Tyrant. And in Jill's story, it's revealed by Wesker that the Umbrella Corporation took hostage of Barry's family, and that's why Barry's been acting weird and helping Wesker with his plans. Sucks if you let him die at that point. The virus used for the Tyrant, called the T-Virus, yeah, real clever there, is what caused the people to turn into the zombie creatures, all in hopes of creating this ultimate life form. In Jill's story, Barry comes and saves her from being shot by Wesker, and in Chris's, Rebecca is shot by Wesker. Either way, Wesker releases the Tyrant, and no matter what, it starts by killing Wesker before moving on to Chris or Jill, except for Barry. But Chris and Jill somehow appear to take down the Tyrant. Thankfully, Rebecca was shot in her bulletproof vest, and Barry is also fine, but Wesker has disappeared. At this point, Rebecca, or probably Wesker, in Jill's story, activates the self-destruct sequence to finish off the experiments there, and in Wesker's case, to also kill Chris and Jill. During the escape, the player can save either Jill or Chris at this point during the escape sequence since all the locks are unlocked during the self-destruct sequence. When the team gets to the roof to signal their helicopter pilot, the Tyrant appears once again to finish off the job, with Rebecca or Barry helping the best they can. But with some luck, and some magnum shots and a rocket launcher, holy crap, the Tyrant is killed and the mansion is destroyed with our team surviving. The end. Or one of them at least. Have fun with the PSD! And that's the story. Like I said earlier, the story in a nutshell is basically just discovering how the mansion works, where secrets lie within it, and an even smaller nutshell is, zombie outbreak happened? Go find out why. Oh, and it's Wesker. You only find out the details behind the mansion and the behind the scenes of the Umbrella Corporation through exploring the mansion and finding the many files and notes left by the employees and test subjects there. I honestly don't have much to say about how the story really is. The story is given to the player subtly along with adding parts of that to the gameplay. The story is purposely shrouded in mystery. What will you discover in this far-off mansion away from society? Explore, and perhaps you'll find out. The subtle hints of what's up with Barry and Wesker seem pretty obvious, but in Barry's case, he still saves Jill from the plant monster, so what's his deal? Sorry, Wesker, but no one wears those shades without plotting something maniacal. But the mystery in the story and setting keep pushing you forward to want to know more about it. It makes you want to pick up those optional letters and files from the employees. Not knowing something and wanting to find out more is usually what captivates anyone to continue on in a story. Want to know why a couple brothers lost an arm, a leg, and an entire person? Watch to find out. It's the simple want to know more, but what makes the mystery behind Resident Evil Remake different is how you must discover it on your own through the gameplay. You could choose not to read anything or not touch the clues at all, but the player discovering it all for themselves before the characters in the game say anything is what makes it great. Just a quick note though, if you trust Barry when he appears to turn on you, and you both make it out alive from Lisa Trevor, Jill just drops the whole thing completely until their next encounter with Wesker. Like, come on, get some answers! And I honestly just really enjoy our main cast of the characters. Chris is this cool professional who's just trying to keep everyone going. Rebecca is this new rookie who, despite her rookie label and her current circumstances, is trying her best to help. Jill, like Chris, is a badass who just wants to get everyone to safety, and Barry, despite helping Wesker, just wants his kids to be safe and see them again. Resident Evil isn't the most groundbreaking horror story, or just any story ever, but the way it blends into the gameplay so seamlessly is what makes the overall story and watching those cutscenes so satisfying and rewarding. Speaking of which, now for the main selling point of most games, playing it. At the beginning of the game, like right when you start it up, the game allows you to pick the control setup you want, classic or modern. I've always heard about the tank controls in the classic PS1 games, and since I really don't have any want to go back to those games because of their remakes, I choose classic controls, which gives it the original PS1 game feel of control. The game also allows you to choose your difficulty you want to start with. I picked the middle one thinking it was the normal difficulty, but learned much later that it was easy mode, and the one below it is super easy mode. And the normal one I wanted to pick was the top pick, but like, I don't think climbing a mountain is normal for anyone. Well, anyways, when you first take control of the character with classic controls, you realize why everyone calls it tank controls. You can't just turn in any direction you want in an instance. The character takes their time to turn their direction first, and then you can move in that direction they're facing. Moving the left control stick only turns your character. You only walk or run when you push the stick forward regardless of what direction you're facing. If a zombie is coming after you, you better hope you have enough time to turn your character first before running in that direction. At least you can do an action that immediately turns the character around if you want to run the opposite direction, but even that still takes a hot second to do. What I just said and when I first felt the controls sound like a point against the game, but it's actually quite the contrary. I can't even imagine playing this game with modern controls. The classic tank controls really help this game shine. It makes you feel more vulnerable to the dangers around you. And it's not all bad since enemies around you move with tank controls as well. That stiffness makes you feel how the characters probably feel. Helpless. The game also has fixed camera angles. Now, again, this sounds bad, until you realize that it also makes the tank controls shine. So no matter what fixed angle you're at, you can always just push up and the character will move in that direction they're facing. Not to mention that these camera angles all look like shots from every horror movie you've ever seen. Shots where you see your characters from under a bed, a shot where you see your character from the far end of a hall, or a shot from the top of a stairway as your character descends further into the unknown. It makes for excellent tension. The actual quote-unquote combat is where the game begins shining even more than it already has. Did I say combat? I meant struggle. When I encountered my first zombie as Chris, and even as Jill, I tried killing the zombie before me with my knife alone. I tried this a couple times, and each time the game told me to fuck off and try something else. After that important lesson, I quickly learned another lesson after I went back to kill the first zombie as Chris, and that's, you only just got a gun with 15 ammo, and you just wasted half it on your first zombie. This is gonna be rough on you, buddy. I was actually terrified. Terrified that I couldn't bring the comfort of knowing a zombie is dead so easily. I had to actually think about preserving ammo at points in this mansion boundary filled with many and many creatures, because if I didn't, this first playthrough is going to be even longer than it already was. And not just ammo, but you have limited saves too, so you never feel safe. And what made it worse is that later you read a file that I mentioned earlier on, is unless you destroy the zombie's head or burn them, they will come back again. My heart sank when I first read that, thinking to all the corpses that I saw and made up until that point. But preserving ammo and thinking about when to use it is part of the game, and I needed to adapt fast. At first you seem helpless with just your handgun, but later on in the game you get different shotguns, a magnum, and a Jill story, or grenade launcher from a dead Bravo team member. And earlier in, the game introduces defensive items to help when someone grabs you. Even your handgun alone is more than capable at the beginning of keeping you safe. You can shoot the zombie a few times for a second or two to run past them, or shoot their legs so they can fall, giving you more time. Or if you're brave enough with the handgun alone, you can aim up and shoot their heads, and hope they explode, even if it looks like you're aiming at the sky or the ground. Sometimes it happens anyways when you're aiming straight, but if you have like any shotgun or magnum, waiting until the very last second to blow a zombie's head off is so satisfying. But you better keep that ammo, cause zombies aren't your only problem. When I say creatures or monsters, I mean you have sentient vines, sharks, giant spiders, zombie dogs, regular snakes, bees, and in the late game, these things called hunters. So let's say you did keep the zombies alive that you can easily pass or dealt with when coming back the second time. That doesn't mean shit when you return back to the mansion again after the residential area. When they appear, they take the place of any zombie of the room they enter. Probably because they just kill everything in sight. They're ferocious, adamant, they eat ammo, and they hurt. Holy fuck. The other big part of the game besides surviving is solving the many puzzles in the mansion. And I don't mean the many puzzles you do to obtain an item. I mean the overarching puzzle that is the Resident Evil mansion. You will slowly start obtaining items little by little from different rooms, areas, and even the enemies. You need to figure out what to do with an item through either wandering around or examining the item itself. I have thoroughly learned that you need to examine everything, and I mean everything, and every part of everything. I was so lost when I was first playing this as Chris, walking around trying to figure out what to do at the very beginning just because I examined the book, but I didn't hit the check button on the key on the back of the book. And this happened to me multiple times. Like after more than halfway through, I knew I literally needed to check anything suspicious on any item while examining the item itself. But the puzzles are very clever, and besides just examining the item, you really need to think about what connects to what and how, and solve it. Nothing in the game will help you besides the files and design of the surroundings. The bosses, I guess you could call them, are great, except for Lisa Trevor, who just kinda... Some of them are beaten by solving a puzzle surrounding them, while some you just need to unload into them. Now, my first playthrough as Chris was discovering everything for the first time, and it was great and stuff, but my second playthrough as Jill really made the level geometry stand out. Since I knew what to do now, since they basically go through everything the same way, I just blasted through the game as Jill, even on the higher difficulty of climbing a mountain. Normal. I thought I was going to have a harder time since I even struggled on easy, but no. I knew what to do, I knew how to do it, where to go, and all I needed to do was plan my route and what to bring. You have a limited space on carrying items. Chris has 6 while Jill has a good 8. And that just flat out makes you think Jill is the better one, which she is, but not for that reason, since Jill can't take as many hits as Chris and doesn't carry a lighter as her personal item. But that doesn't mean shit when Jill has something called a lockpick as her personal item. Chris needs to find very old keys to open some doors, while Jill has no need for those old keys at all. She just opens it with her lockpick and keeps moving. True, she doesn't get Rebecca to give her free limited heals like Chris does, but who cares, especially if this is your second playthrough. The biggest challenge of the higher difficulty was holding on to more ammo and health refills, which I was already in the mindset to do at that point anyways. The level geometry is so well done I can't even express that enough. Just as I finished one major segment and stopped at a safe room to use the magic truck, which stores all your items that you don't need, I moved straight on to the next segment that the game led me right next to. It's amazing. No backtracking. Just don't get too careless. It's all fun and games until you wait till after 2 hours of progress and risk losing that. After you beat the game as Jill and or Chris, you unlock new modes like survival mode or harder difficulties like not having your items be available between all magic boxes. Not now. After a clean 26 hours, I'm good and satisfied. You also unlock new costumes for them and a wardrobe key to change into more outfits on replays, which look pretty cool, I'm not gonna lie. Oh, that was the paragraph. They even gave Rebecca a costume for a few times you play as her. Interesting. Oh. I see why. Did I forget to mention that if you don't know how to play the piano in this place, you're fucked? Good thing Jill and Rebecca are just natural geniuses. Goddamn.
Practice makes perfect.
What the fuck? Let's talk about this game's sound design really quick. It's creepy, it's unsettling, and it's nerve-wracking. When you enter through a squeaky door just to be greeted by the sound of a moaning zombie somewhere in the distance, or the breathing of a hunter, just adds to the already grim atmosphere. Do I even need to mention the music? Like, seriously? I feel like I'm just shilling out for people to buy this game at this point. All the aspects I talk about are just filled with positivity. I never even played a Resident Evil game before, and I always loved the save room themes for each game, and this game didn't disappoint in the slightest. Not as good as the original Resident Evil 2 save room theme, but still top tier. The music just intensifies the horror vibe this game has. The game is so quiet, all you have to accompany you are these great low-tuned tracks and your own fears. Unlike the last HD port of a GameCube game I looked at, this game's graphics are amazing. Obviously, more recent RE games like Resident Evil 2 and 3 remakes are just plain graphically impressive. But for an HD game that was originally on the GameCube, this is great. The old grade textures and dark lighting of the background in the mansion really sell the atmosphere off that alone. The animations aren't the best ever, but are still pretty solid. Now obviously this game looks better and has better animations than the original PS1 game, but let's be honest with each other, the opening movie in the original is just way better. Come on. This is great. The acting is corny, and sometimes it's hard to tell what's happening, but that's what makes it amazing. Really gives it that movie feel.
Resident Evil.
Alright.
Speaking of acting, let's talk about that for a minute. For the most part, the voice acting is fine and the voices fit their characters, but geez, the delivery of some of these lines.
Premature.
And Jill just sounds so monotone about so much.
Now that you mention it, yeah.
But she can also sound like a real ass kicker too?
Start talking. Don't lie to me.
It's
Chris,
weird at
you just
times,
get
but
in
not
contact with
off-putting
Brad
enough for me to
somehow.
really dislike it.
Am I poisoned?
Huh?
I need serum.
This was a first for me. I finally played a Resident Evil game after all these years of admiring it from afar, and it was the remake of the first game, the place I've always wanted to start. And after finally playing this game, I can honestly say that this is one of my favorite games I've ever played. No joke. I was definitely frustrated and bored at points for not knowing what to do in my first playthrough. I really was. But when I finally realized what I had to do, or quadruple checked what items I had and what they did, I felt so stupid and proceeded onwards, swallowing that I wasn't clever enough to figure it out sooner. You know when people enjoy something, but they don't really know why? Well, this isn't the case. I know why I and other people love this game now, and I now know why it's held in such high regard. The gameplay is amazing, the plot ties in well with the gameplay, the characters, while not deep, are solid and enjoyable, including Wesker, and the atmosphere is just spot on perfect, in my opinion. I can't wait to try out the rest of the remakes in RE4 down the line. If you have a GameCube, PS4, or a good enough computer, I implore you to try it out. The tank controls aren't for everyone, they really aren't. But give it a try. Please. I had a friend try and quit the game because they didn't like the control of Classic, and weren't too impressed with the fixed camera angles with the modern control setup. Not everyone will enjoy that sense of not complete control, but if you enjoy horror and like the feeling of being on the edge of your seat not knowing what's coming next, or you want something spooky for the Halloween time, play Resident Evil Remake. Video games are there to have a good time, and Remake is a good time. Now time for revenge!